one of the guys representative for our Christmas tree.
Right. So as most of you have probably figured out, it's not actually loading anything. I just thought it was like a cute way to... never mind. Let's just go. Click it. Bam. My name is Niklas. Hello everyone. My name is Niklas. And I am a solo game developer. I used to say that I was a single game developer, but then I was like, why are you bringing up your relationship status? So apparently I'm a solo developer. And that basically means that I make my own games all by myself, and I try to live off of that. And I also work as a freelance 3D artist. And I've been involved in a lot of game projects over the past few years. And I studied here from 2008 to 2012 apparently, and I studied graphics, so I'm fundamentally an artist. And now I'm back in town to basically talk about what I've been up to since I left and how that has worked out for me. Summary. I'm going to start by just run through the whole presentation really quickly to sort of show you who I am and what I've done. And then I'm going to go back to all the topics and sort of discuss them in more detail. First of all, I studied here in 2008. So in 2009 was my first year project, which was called Walkabout. And I don't know if you recognize this game, if this is still part of the sort of history of the school. It stands right there. Look at the beautiful machine. It was really cool, and it set the standards for me and my friends, and we kind of stuck together. That team stuck together for the whole rest of the education, and we tried again and again to make a game that was better than this. And then after I graduated, I made my very first game by myself, which was called Belladonna. And it is now actually on Steam, weirdly. And it's a 2D point and click. It's kind of like a horror, mystery, adventure kind of thing. And I made this before I learned how to code. So the gameplay is very primitive. But to sort of compensate for that, I have these elaborate hand-drawn backgrounds and a story that is very sort of personal and nigh on incomprehensible. And I will come back later to talk about what this was like to make, but I just want to note now that it was released in 2015, and if I graduated in 2012, then what the heck happened to all those years in between? Well, the answer is that I worked as a freelance artist, and I also made game assets for the Unity Asset Store, because you do what you gotta do to pay rent, you know? And this is also something that I will come back to later, because I suspect that some of you in the audience might actually sort of travel down this path and or at least consider it a possible career. But enough about that, I want to talk about my own games. This is my game. This is the game I am currently working on. It's called Yono and the Celestial Elephant, and you actually play as the elephant. And it's a kind of like a puzzle adventure game. I call it a Zelda-like. It's most reminiscent of the 2D Zeldas. Even though it's in 3D, it's like a 2D Zelda gameplay-wise, like Link to the Past or especially the Minish Cap. And it is, as I said, in 3D, and it is made in Unity, because at this point in my life I have learned to program, which means I'm now capable of embarking on ambitious full projects in full 3D, with like a whole world to explore, and cities and dungeons and forests and hidden treasures and everything. And I am actually almost finished with this. I have worked on this for over 1.5 years, and right now, yesterday, I started working on the end credits. So that is pretty cool. I also have this, which is going to be my third game. And I'm so super excited about this game. This is gonna be so cool, because for the first time in my life, I'm now actually in a position where I sort of have the power and the competence to make the kind of games that I've been wanting to make for my whole life. So if the elephant game is like a 2D Zelda game, then this is like Wind Waker. And I am showing you this slide now because I'm not going to be able to shut up about this for the rest of the presentation. But I will not show you any screenshots or anything, and you're all going to wonder why I'm so secretive and what I'm hiding from you. But I'm not hiding anything. This is what there is. It's like it's all in my head right now, and I have to scribble notes on paper. And I have one 3D model that you see up in the corner, but it doesn't even look like that anymore. So yeah. And all of this it's a little bit confusing because it's actually 3 different stories, and the annoying part is that they are not one after another, but they're like all at the same time entwining into each other. And the first story, which is all the way to the left, is Lucid Dreams, which is the team that me and my friends who made Walkabouts in the first year, we stuck together and we formed a company called Lucid Dreams, and we actually released Walkabout on mobile phones. And then the second story in the middle is Villains for Hire, which is basically me and the other artist from Lucid Dreams. We teamed up and started working as freelancers together, which already kind of clues you in that Lucid Dreams wasn't quite enough to pay the rent. And then the third is Neckbolt, which is just me on my lonesome making my own games. And all of these story strands sort of intertwined with each other in this mess that you see down here. And that is a pretty good visual representation of what the past 5 years of my life has been like. And I'm here to sort of try and untangle all of that. But before I start, I want to show you guys a special slide that is sort of the common theme for this whole presentation. And this is the kind of the motto that I have been starting to live by lately, and the doctrine that has gotten me through the ups and downs of that mayhem that you see there. And it looks like this. We fail, we bounce, we fail again, right? So success is not a matter of making it big on your first try. It seems like you're only going to get one chance, but that's not true. You get as many chances as you can muster the fortitude to handle. So the skill that you need is not the ability to do things right, but rather the resilience to be able to bounce back and try again when you screw up. And that's something to keep in mind for the rest of the presentation, because we're going to come back to that again and again and again. Good! That was the summary. Now let's start with the real presentation. Okay, all the way back in the beginning, we start with the first story, which is Lucid Dreams. And it's about Walkabout, yes. And that is us up there. And this is our first year project. It's a side-scroller game. And you have all these little characters look kind of like this, and they walk by themselves without input from the player through like a weird labyrinth level. And then you can grab the screen, and then you can rotate the whole screen around, which makes the gravity fall. The gravity is always your world down, so they will fall in new directions. On the cabinet, you had this wheel that you turn around, and it was pretty cool. And it was also in large part a brainchild of mine. Like the core concept and the puzzle design and the characters, they were all things that came directly from me personally, and the rest of the team, they had the courage to trust me and to help me make this happen, right? And then the reason that I'm saying that is not because I want to brag, although I also want to brag. It is, I'm drawing attention to this because it is an important aspect of this next slide that I have, which is this. This is the beginning of my origin story. This is my creation myth. We are accepting the Game of the Year in 2009 for Walkabout. And that was like the first time that a first year project had gotten such a prize. And I've been remembering this very day a lot in the recent years because of what it has meant to me as a person. Because as I said, this is where it all starts, right? This shows that my weird ideas can be appreciated, right? Even if they make no sense at all when I try to explain them in the beginning. If I do get to finish it and turn it into a whole game, then it could be good, you know? And it's really easy to be skeptical of like a naked little idea, and if no one understands the point of it. But if you stick with it and you like let it grow into its full form, then people will understand it and they will like it, right? And this day has given me the gift of confidence, right? The confidence to believe in my own ideas even when no one else does. And let me tell you, no one else does. Right, we stayed together, Lucid Dreams, for the rest of the school years. We made a few projects, we made one project a year. Didn't really win anything noteworthy after that, but it doesn't matter so much. We were pushing ourselves to see what we can achieve and trying to we tried to make games in 3D, and we tried to make games in weird genres that we didn't know anything about, and we tried to always push the limits of what we could do. But in time, the school years were over. So what happened then? Well, we suddenly needed an income to keep going. So we turned Lucid Dreams into a proper company. And we were going to release Walkabout, which was our best game, on smartphones. And that's a pretty good fit, right? Like, you can turn the whole phone around with the accelerometer, or you can grab the touchscreen and flick it around. And it's colorful and cute, and it fits pretty well on a phone. Thing is though, there was no way we could fit the original version onto a phone. So we had to make the whole game over from scratch. And we did it in Unity this time, and we actually used flat 3D models for all the graphics. This was before Unity had support for 2D sprites. So we made our own system which function pretty much the same way. So all these trees are actually 3D models, whereas in the first version they are an illustration. And I don't know, I kind of think that the game took a bit of a hit in the conversion. The graphics are simpler and the physics are floatier, and the character animations are stiffer and less expressive, so on. But this feeling may also be because I now know what happened next. And what happened next is this. So we did release it on both iPhone and on the Android, and we did make a little bit of money off of it, but nowhere near enough to support 6 people. That's actually a lot of money required for that. So what does one person need to live for like a month? Maybe 10 or 8,000 Swedish crowns, not 8 crowns, 8,000 Swedish crowns. And that's not a super comfortable life, right? Living on 8,000 crowns a month is pretty rough, but it's doable. But then you have to multiply that by 6, and that's just for 1 month. And you haven't even paid taxes yet. So the amount of money that we managed to get into Lucid Dreams, it wasn't even close to what we would have needed to keep going. And we ended up canceling that company. And just as an aside, starting a company took maybe like a month. Canceling a company, they took several years. It is significantly easier to start a company than it is to close them. So that didn't really work. But do you know what I say to that? I say it's bouncy time! Let's do the bounce dance! This is how you do it, people. You train your brain to enjoy failure. That's gonna backfire when you start failing on purpose to get a kick out of it. Right, and this bounce led to Villains for Hire, which is our second story. And so me and Alex, that's him over there, we were the 2 artists from Lucid Dreams, and we joined forces and started to freelancing together as a team, right? And we never officially formed a Villains for Hire company because we were still suffering the consequences of having the Lucid Dreams company. So instead we started cruising the interwebs looking for clients. And we also left Visby and moved to Stockholm with some idea that a bigger city would offer more opportunities, right? It kind of makes sense. But in the end, we do live in the age of the internet, and your physical location isn't actually that relevant, it turns out. And now we're entering a period of my life that I have just gotten out of, right? This very year, in fact. So now in hindsight, it's easy for me to call these my dog years, right? These are the years when I lived in Stockholm and I worked for clients to try and pay my rent, and like we're really talking bare light bulbs, we're talking poor insulation, we're talking cockroaches. I literally had cockroaches in my kitchen at this time. But I also did a lot of work for the Unity Asset Store and for clients, and working on my game Belladonna, which you saw. And the good life that I have lived this year is basically just me finally reaping the benefits of the work that I did in my cockroach apartment in Stockholm. So me and Alex, we would bring our laptops into town and we would sit down in a cafe all day to work. And we had like a handful of spots that we would sort of circulate between when people got fed up with us. Our friends call us orphan developers. And this is what the asset store looks like. This is an asset that I am selling, although not a very good one. Nobody buys thing, and why would they? If it isn't pure fantasy or some sort of like alien style sci-fi, it's not really a moneymaker. Even if you do put a pretty girl on the cover, which I tried once and didn't really work out, so I kind of stopped doing that. But the asset store is still a pretty good place to be. First off, because it gives you a passive income, right? I still remember the first month, which was like 3 or 4 months in, when I could pay my entire rent using only that month's revenue from the asset store. And I have had months since when I have made several times my rent, which is very nice. But what surprised me and Alex both is that the asset store is also a source for freelance clients. At first we had thought that you would have to sort of chase after people, right? And send them your portfolio to anything you can think of and call them the next day to ask them if you got the mail. But we adopted a strategy which is kind of how I approach romantic dating, you know? So you don't go chasing after people and bothering them for attention like some sort of pickup artist. Instead, you sit down and you make yourself available and present yourself well, and then you let people come to you. Not that this actually works, mind you, but at least it's no less effective than the other way. It does, however, work pretty well for the asset store and finding freelance work. So what happens is that you upload a package on the store, say a handful of cute little alien 3D models with like hats or something. I'm assuming that you are an artist. It also works if you're a programmer, although I don't know how because I never tried that. But anyway, you have your little aliens on the store and you sell some of that and you make some money. And then one day you're gonna get an email from a programmer in like Spain or Turkey or something going, "Hi, I brought your alien pack from the asset store." And it works pretty well. Thing is, I actually have 3 different alien races in my epic sci-fi saga. And I was wondering if you could make more models in the same style. And then you say, yes, yes I can. So me and Alex, Villains for Hire, we found this rather specific niche of programmers working on their hobby projects, right? Because they can't make any art at all, so they need to buy it. But they are programmers, so they have a day job in like a software company or something. So they actually have a bit of disposable income to throw around. And it's not very glamorous work, but as I said earlier, you do what you gotta do to pay your rent. And one of these programmers that we work for, he was richer than any other we ever got in contact with. And that's a pretty interesting case study to talk about. So one day we got this email from this American guy, and he was putting together a team to make like a really, really popular mobile game. It was going to be something like Clash of Clans, but with a sci-fi setting and more of a gritty and serious tone, you know. And he promised us the earth and the sky, right? He's saying we were gonna make millions of dollars off of this, and we were gonna never have to work a day more in our lives. And he had all these contacts and like a huge budget for marketing, and this game was gonna be a smashing hit, right? And the fact that I'm showing you not the screenshots, but this sort of pre-visualization 3D concept art illustration should clue you in that it didn't really work out that way. I did, however, make more money from this one project that I had ever made before, and also possibly still. So, you know, in the end, I'm pretty happy. But it was a very bizarre project, right? I remember this one morning when we were all in a Skype meeting, right? Because everyone is in different time zones, and we find a slot where we can talk on Skype. And he was going on about something. He talked about how he had ordered iPhones because he wanted to test the game on something, right? And he wanted several different devices to test it on. And while he was at it, he might as well buy 10 iPhones, right? Or a dozen iPads, because why not? And while he was saying this, I was signing into my online bank account to double check that I could afford to eat lunch that day. But what happened to the project? Well, you tell me. One day the producer guy disappeared off the face of the earth. I never heard of him again, never received the last month of pay. Don't know what happened to him. I think he's alive. I've seen him sort of pop up on social media occasionally, so I think he's still alive. But the project completely dead. And the orphan developers need to find a new source of income. In other words, it's time to bounce, baby. And this happened a lot, by the way. Not specifically like people going missing, but but projects disappearing halfway through, right? We joked that we were like pirate rats on a sinking ship, and then feeding as much as we can from the sinking ship, and then when it reached the surface level, we jumped to the next ship that started sinking, and we were feeding as much as we can, and then jumped to the next ship. But let's leave the story of Villains for Hire for a little while and take a look at the third story strand, which is my favorite. And it starts with another of these strange slides that I have that you're gonna understand more of later, which is Hatter's gonna hat. Right? Hatter's gonna hat. What the do I mean about that? Well, if you want to call yourself a hatter, you kind of have to make a hat now and again. Right? And if you want to be a game developer, then you kind of have to spend some time making games. That's the defining criteria. And with that in mind, here is Belladonna, my first game. The little logo in the corner has now changed into Neckbolt. And this is the game that I created in evenings and in weekends while working for freelance clients in the daytime. And I could hold a whole presentation just about what making this game was like, but suffice to say, it's a 2D point and click because I didn't know how to code. So I needed to find another way to make games because Hatter's gonna hat. And it took me 2 years to make, and it takes like an hour to play through. And I actually managed to get it through Steam's Greenlight, which surprised me a lot. It was very stressful, but it actually only took like less than a week. And this is super cool, partly because the revenue from this game is now, today, a large portion of my monthly income, but also I had managed to take a project all the way to release, which is no easy feat. I had proved to myself and to everyone around me that I was capable of actually releasing games. Because the step from working on a project to releasing a finished game is not to be underestimated. And after Belladonna, I was a bit exhausted, so I started making smaller mobile games in Unity. These are all available on Google Play right now, but so this is a good way of learning and practicing programming, but it's not a good way to make a profit. Unless you already have the money to get Kate Upton to juggle her fun bugs around, or to get Mr. Schwarzenegger to stand around in an elevator looking grim, I don't really see how you can make like a successful mobile game, because that's what you're competing against, right? In my experience, the climate on the mobile game market is like capitalism on crack, and it's a pretty nasty place. Wolf Sheep Cabbage, for instance, is free with ads, which sounds like a good idea, but it hasn't given me a single cent. No money whatsoever from that. It's actually a pretty good game though, once you figured out how it works. Also, it took me less than a week to make, which is cool, but it's not normal. Like, making a finished release product in a week in a sort of game jam is not normal. And the reason I could do that was that I had sort of built up the momentum from the 2 previous games. Hyperion, not very good, not very interesting, is a space shooter. Machinata is noteworthy because it's a forerunner to the Elephant game, actually. So at this point in time, I'm already planning the Elephant game in my head, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna to be able to make it, because it has a lot of programming and you need a lot of 3D models and animations and stuff. So I made a smaller game in a similar style to see how that worked. So you have the top-down camera and you have the sort of grid-based level design. And that finally brings us to the elephant in the room. This game is the coolest bit of content that I have to show in this presentation. And I don't really have time to go into the details, but let's sacrifice a minute and a half to see what it looks like in motion. Can I do this? Oh, it's loud. Oh my God! Yes, this is what I'm working on. And
did you make the music as well?
No, music is the one thing I do not do at the moment. Also interpretive dancing. No, I did not make music. That is, I'm going to talk about that a bit later actually, how I work together with people. As I said, I call it a Zelda-like. And you play as the elephant. And the elephants are these divine magical beings, and one elephant appears in the world every 1,000 years. And apart from the elephants, there are humans, and a kind of ghost zombie people, like the woman you see here, and also a group of clockwork robots living on the coast. And all of them has one town each and one dungeon each, so there's a lot to explore. And I've been working on this for a little over 1.5 years. I think it's actually pretty exactly 1.5 years. And I am pretty close to done. I'm basically reaching feature complete before this year is out, knock on wood. And I'm going to spend the next spring preparing for release on PC and possibly consoles, if I can manage. But from those lofty heights, let's continue with the story and take a plunge back into the deep. That's a segue! This is the fall of last year, so 2015. And Villains for Hire are working on this goddamn fish game. This is a really bad game. I'm sorry, there is no such thing as objective truth. I think that this is a really bad game. And I mean, just look at it. And I say that as a person who is responsible for the graphics that you see. This is a project that made me quit freelancing altogether. And I want to clarify though that I'm not mad at the company or any of the individual people involved with this. I left because of creative differences, and as far as I know, they're actually still going strong with this. And we had a pretty good team. Whoops, there you go. We had a pretty good team. That guy who disappeared a few slides ago, he had assembled a team, hadn't he? So when one of those guys got a project of his own, he went back and kind of recruited as many of us who got left behind that time. So we had proper game designers, we had producers, we had several programmers who were all really competent, and then we had me and Alex doing all the art. And yet, we worked for like a month or like 6 weeks or something. And that gave us one fish swimming across an empty scene. And it's multiplayer, so several fish can swim around together, but at that time it was lagging so much that it was completely unplayable. Like fish would teleport across the screen, and as soon as you collided with anyone, you got eaten, which means you were swimming around minding your own business, and then from nowhere, a lagging fish would teleport on top of you, and you would get an instant game over. And yes. And in that same time, that's in not only the same time period, but specifically the same month, I was working by myself, working only in the evenings on the elephant game, and I made an entire city full of people. I made humanoid characters that can turn around and look at you when you run past. I made an entire system for importing dialogue text from text files and reading them into the game, and I made loads of little side quests and these small little animals that you can pick up and carry around. And I mean, how does that even work? Why is it that I can make all that by myself effortlessly, without even breaking a sweat, while a whole team of people struggle to get a character to move across the screen? What's up with that? And this is not the first project when I have noticed this. So, what eventually happened is that we needed to release something on a deadline, so we uploaded the first version. We were going to patch that and keep maintaining that. And we had this little post-mortem with the whole team, which was just the producer asking us the simple question, how many stars would you give to this game on the App Store? And then he said, Niklas, why don't you start? And I was like, no, please don't start with me. I don't want to have to be the one to set the tone for the rest of this meeting. And they got intrigued, like, why is that? Now you have to say. So I said, never mind giving it stars. I wouldn't even download this shit. Even if it was technically well executed, which it isn't, it's still a type of game that is completely despicable, bound up in microtransaction and ads and forcing you to share it with friends. And and the rest of the meeting, the rest of the guys were like, I don't know, maybe like 4 stars, it's got a few issues, but it is pretty good. So there you go. And the very next morning, the producer got me and Alex in a Skype call, and he said to me, you know what? I get the sense that you don't really like working on this project. Well, you're not wrong. And that's how I got fired from that game. Or possibly I quit. It's a bit unclear. We agreed to go our separate ways, effective immediately. Now, this is my side of the story, and if you asked them about this event, they would probably say that I am a grumpy bastard who is very difficult to work with, which, that's true enough. I am very difficult to work with. And so I left. And not only did I leave this project, I left Stockholm altogether and moved back down to Gothenburg, which is where I am originally from. I left my cockroaches, and I left the whole idea of working for clients, and I started working on the elephant game on full time. And that sounds like that should be such a positive thing, right? But the thing is, I also left all my friends behind and my entire source of income. So it was a pretty big step to take. Where is the slide? There. And that brings us up to this year. I now live all alone, and I work all alone. And I'm basically having the best life ever. This is the year when I have been doing exactly what I dreamt of doing when I studied here, which is make my own games without anyone telling me what to do or, no, you can't do that. No one is going to get it, you know? And all my life, people have been telling me that teamwork is the only way to do things. And it's like all your favorite games, for instance, all the games that you like to play are made by huge teams. So apparently that's how it works. And school assignments have to be done in groups, right? And it starts when you're just a small little child and your parents say to you, why don't you go outside and play with your friends? You can't sit in here all day. And I have always had, even since I was a little child, a small suspicion that they are all wrong. The logistics of teamwork it just takes too much effort and so much energy has to be spent just to get the team functional that the work suffers. And then they say, oh, please, give it a try at least, right? You can't dismiss it if you haven't given it a chance. But now, finally, I am in a position when I can say, I have given it a chance. For years, I have tried to make it work in several different configurations for people. We tried it with Lucid Dreams, and I have worked on countless projects for countless clients, and I have started several game projects with friends in different combinations again and again and again, and it has never worked out for me. All I have done is jump from one sinking ship to another sinking ship. So will you please just let me sit down with my laptop and work on my goddamn elephant game in peace? It's not going to be a bad game. In fact, it's going to be immeasurably better than it could ever be if I tried to make it together with others. I taught myself how to code rather than going back to working in teams. And while I'm in this bellicose mode, allow me to have a word on iteration. You all know what that means, I guess. It's a method of doing creative work where you constantly examine what you have and you try to sort of find new ways to improve it. And just like teamwork, this method is often presented as the best way of doing things. Because there's lots of room to solve problems, and you can test new ideas really easily, and you can even discover something new and unexpected about your own project. But the thing is, this has one massive flaw. How do you know when you are done? You're not working with a specific end goal in mind, which means you have no win criteria. All you do is solving the problem right in front of you, which means you end up with hotfix upon hotfix upon hotfix with no direction. And this problem leads to insecurity and second guessing, because you may have iterated your game for a bit, and it's pretty good, but maybe it could be better. Who knows? So you iterate some more, and you get stuck in this loop where there is always that nagging little possibility that the game could be better, right? And since you don't have a finished idea in your mind, you have nothing to measure against. So you can't tell how well it succeeds in being what it's supposed to be. There is no way of knowing when you're done iterating. In fact, iteration is only useful if you don't know what you're doing. And I know that sounds pretty harsh and brutal and a bit radical, but there are actually several really good reasons, valid reasons for not knowing what you're doing. For instance, you're actually incompetent. I have to put that on there. It's not very interesting. It's also not the case. I mean, you've all studied here, you've all studied game designs and game development, so let's just assume that you do have some skill, right? But the next one is you have a team with diverse interests. So you have this team and you have to find a sort of a compromise project that everyone in the team is on board with. And it becomes this big Venn diagram where all the team members have their own conception of the project, and you're trying to find this little area where everyone's ideas sort of overlap. And the project as a whole never exists fully in any one person's mind. No one in the team has a complete understanding on what you're doing. The debunk team talked a bit about this too as well. But then again, Why would you ever work in a team, right? Last point, you may be short on time, right? Maybe you have a deadline, or it's a game jam, so you didn't really have that much time, or hatter's gonna hat. You can't afford to sit around and wait for like a watertight design to emerge. You have to start working, and because if you're not doing any work, then you're just kind of wasting time. Nowadays, I never start a project unless I have been thinking about it for at least 6 months, possibly more, or a year if I can. And that is true for the elephant game, which I was already planning. Halfway through Belladonna, I was already planning the elephant game. Like I said, I made Machinata to test it, didn't I? And that is also true for my next game, which I've been designing in the background, in the back of my head, since like March this year. So basically when I'm 2/3 through one game, I start planning for the next one, but I don't start producing any assets or writing any code at all until the whole project is planned out in meticulous detail. And then you say, well, that's nice for you, but how do you know when you're done? Well, I'll tell you. The design is finished when it literally cannot be any other way. So the design of a video game is going to be this big interconnecting system where each individual part is connected to several other points. So like a Koopa Troopa in Mario is killed by jumping on it, because Mario's primary ability is jumping, so they have to look like turtles, so you have this sort of shell thing that you can land on, which means Bowser is a giant turtle because he's their boss, but you can't jump on him because he has spikes on his shell, but you can't make him fall into a fire, and you know that fire is dangerous because Mario himself has been hurt by fire throughout the game. And so on and so on. Maybe this isn't the best example, but I hope you see what you mean. You can't change any single detail because there are tons of other details that are dependent on each and every one of them, right? If the Koopa Troopas were like squirrels, then Bowser couldn't look like that, and then these ramifications throughout the whole project. And naturally, this takes a very long time to create. You kind of keep the whole project in the back of your head for month and month and month until you are so instinctively familiar with all the details that you develop a sense, almost like a taste, like, so that when you get a new idea, you can immediately tell, not rationally, but you can sort of sense whether or not it's going to fit in with the rest of the system. And this is very cumbersome to do in a team, because hatter's gonna hat, and what are you gonna have the rest of the team do while they sit around and wait for the design to get nailed down? They might as well start iterating on some prototypes in the meantime, right? But why would you ever work in a team? And then there is the issues of problems popping up that you hadn't anticipated. You can't possibly plan for everything, right? Something is going to go wrong, and you are going to have to adapt. And yes, that is true enough. You can't anticipate everything, and there will be unexpected difficulties. But I also want to point out that get good. If you notice that you often have to deal with unexpected problems, then you should probably get better at anticipating problems. And that is the end of my little personal rant. And now I'm going to talk about what I did this summer, the summer of this year. This is the photo from Stugan in 2016, which is where they get 20 or something game developers from all over the world actually, and then they ship us all up to a small cabin in the forest in Sweden, and we get to work there on our games for 2 months. And I got in this year, and I was working on the elephant game, and if you think that that sounds really, really great, then yeah, it was just about that great. And there is going to be a Stugan next year, presumably, and maybe you can apply, and the application time is in spring. And overall, 2016 has been the year when I finally started to reap the rewards of all the hard work that I put down since I left school. Belladonna was released in 2015, early 2015, but it kind of took a while before I started seeing the consequences of that. And I also needed to make that traumatic break with my freelancing life in Stockholm and really sort of commit to this new life. But once I did, the development of the elephant game, it really took off. You'd be amazed how fast you can make a game if you're actually working on it. And it was not long after that I got accepted to Stugan, which was not a random happenstance, right? Me going to this place is a direct consequence of me having the elephant game to show. And that, in turn, is a direct consequence of releasing Belladonna on Steam. And now I'm standing here on a stage giving a presentation about my life, invited as an alumni by the school. How cool is that? Just last year, no one even considered inviting me. This time last year, I was a random nobody drawing little fishes for a project that I really did not like. And with that, I say, thank you for paying attention. Sorry for the pun. And applause and questions.
So I've been talking to a lot of indie developers about how to succeed in the industry and such.
It's a lottery.
And what I constantly hear is that you have to have a social media presence. When you don't have a big company, you have to be active with your user base. You have to create your community, so there will be interest in your game, because no one will just buy your game because it's good. So what have you done? Or do you think it's important to build a sort of social media
That's a very good question,
presence?
especially now that we have crowdfundings and Kickstarters and the Steam Greenlight. Like, in order to get to Steam, I mean, you can get a publisher to kind of go in the back door, but to get to Steam, you need a ton of votes. And where are you going to get those votes? Well, you have to get them from a fan base on social media. Which is difficult because nobody likes people, and I really don't like people. And having to be available online is like, my phone makes a little signal every time I get an email, and I hate that signal. I never read my emails until like 5 hours later when I worked out the energy to sort of look at my inbox. And I was like, I'm gonna need people to vote for my game on Greenlight. How are we gonna get that, right? So I picked a platform. I picked Twitter, because I figured if you only have 140 characters, there's not much you can do wrong, right? Like, there's not that much you can screw up with 140 characters. And I was like, I'm not going to do Facebook, I'm not going to go Google Plus or YouTube or anything, I'm just going to focus on this one thing. And I started already in Belladonna. There's the elephant game. I mean, you saw it. It's pretty lovable, right? I mean, I talk about how great my game is, but I genuinely feel that myself. Like, that sensation that you have, oh my god, it's so cute, I have that every single day. And Belladonna was not like that. Belladonna was kind of weird and creepy and strange to understand. Like, you basically have to sort of shift your mind outside of a regular human moral system to even begin to read the text, right? And it was really difficult to sell that, obviously. Who would have thought, right? So posting a screenshot of Belladonna on Steam, it gets like 1 or 2 retweets. But posting a little GIF of a cute little elephant picking up a flower, that, you know, the difference is significant. So it was a lot of fun to sort of go from this obscure, weird personal horror game to this really lovable, cartoony elephant, because there's just so much more traction online. And I started doing it like a devlog, written devlog, which nobody ever read, which meant I never stopped writing it. Like, you gotta minimize your effort to get over the pain threshold of doing this work. And for this year, right, so I left Stockholm, which means I left my income, and I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna be able to live. But I hear about this thing called crowdfunding. That's what all the cool kids do nowadays. They do crowdfunding, which means they need people instead of money, which is strange. And I did not want to do a Kickstarter, because I had been involved with a few Kickstarters for freelance clients, right? And working as a freelancer for a Kickstarter project is so strange, because they're like, yeah, we're totally gonna get a lot of money, we're gonna pay you then. And you're like, yeah, well, what happens if you don't get any money? Do I get paid at all, you know? So they have a small Kickstarter budget that you're working on making some cool illustration and concept art and stuff, and then their Kickstarter doesn't go through because why would it? Like, you hear about all the successful Kickstarters, but for everyone that succeeds, there's like hundreds who doesn't succeed. And it's so dangerous because if you don't meet the target at all, you don't get any money at all, right? There's no halfway fail. And you need to be able to bounce, right? If you fail, you need to bounce, which means if you fail a Kickstarter, you get nothing, and there is no energy to bounce from that. So I really did not want to do a Kickstarter. So I was like, there's this other thing called Patreon, right? What the heck is that? What is a Patreon? And I started exploring that, figuring that's going to be my source of income. And I was like, well, I'm going to need to make YouTube videos for this to work. Apparently, I'm going to have to make a YouTube video like once a week to provide content for a Patreon. Because Patreon, you have subscribers and they give you money every week. But a game, like, you work on a game for 2 years and then you release it all at once, right? It's not something you do every day or every week. You release it all at the end. So you can't really make a game the product of a Patreon. So instead, I started doing a YouTube series of developer blogs, which was super uncomfortable. You know, having a camera in front of your face going, hi, my name is Niklas Hallin, this is my dev blog, I'm going to talk about how the enemies patrol. It's really, really awkward. And what I do is I lower your expectations, and then you overachieve, right? You start by going, I'm gonna do something really small and really crappy, but I'm gonna do the best crappy thing you ever saw, right? You remember how I started this presentation with an awkward joke about the loading bar that didn't work, right? That was super embarrassing for me, but once I've done that, once I've already failed before I even started, there's nothing that could go worse, you know, I just keep rolling from that. So I specifically put in a joke that I know was not gonna be funny, so that the first thing I do is like, shit, this isn't working. And after that, you have the freedom to do whatever the heck you want, right? So I made a dev blog that is really, really bad. The camera quality, I recorded on my cell phone. And I'm looking at these professional YouTubers with like a studio with lighting, and they have like proper clothing and like script and a teleprompter and everything. I'm like, that's what I'm aiming for, but it's not what I'm doing. And I was like, I write topic that no one understands, right? Generally, when I talk, no one understands what I'm on about, which is why I work alone now. And my devblog scripts were also like, I'm going to talk about Aristotle, or I'm going to talk about Ratchet and Clank and how they made animation for that, and I'm going to talk about how how space works. You know, start off topic, like you start with a freaking loading bar. Start off topic, and then once you've already failed, you can just keep going from there. And I have sort of developed that process over this year, and I actually made one YouTube video a week for better part of this year. How much money did that give me? Well, not particularly much. I do have like 2 or 3 Patreon supporters, so shout out to you, but there's nothing, like I can maybe get a lunch every month or something. So that didn't work. But after it became clear that that was not going to work, I kind of kept going. You know, I've already committed to this ridiculously dumb idea, the most socially awkward person on the planet having a YouTube blog about video games. Like, why would you do that?
I love your devlogs.
That's great. It's self-deprecating humor, you know. That's the only defense you have against awkwardness. You have to sort of, you can't win against awkwardness. You have to sort of push through it, right? I'm standing on a stage now talking to an audience, which is the worst thing you can do. But I don't know, now I have the energy up, I can keep going. Because, I don't know. So the question I'm trying to, as I said, I go off topic a lot in my devlogs, right? The question I'm trying to discuss is social media presence. Yes. I listened to this rap song once. No, I did. I listened to the rap song once. I don't remember who it was, but he said that I am successful now. Rappers tend to either rap about how crappy their life is in the ghetto or how much cool cars and gold they have around. Right? I don't really know how that works. He was rapping about how successful he was, and he said, "This success is only mine. No one else helped me there. No record labels wanted to sign me, and no one believed in me, and I did this all by myself." And I listened to that, and I'm like, you didn't though, because the money that you have in your pocket came from the people that brought your CDs, you know? if you're on a desert island and rap to the palm trees, that's not gonna become anything. You need the audience, right? And that's what the Kickstarter is too. Like the Kickstarter and the crowdfunding, they turn people into money in a way that is absolutely creepy. But once you realize that this is not a nice thing, this is a ridiculously manipulating system that you can game, then it's like just try to figure out how the system works and try to, because that's what everyone else is doing. It's like the mobile market, right? Everyone that is a successful mobile game has already figured out how to maximize their microtransactions and their ad revenue and their sort of pop-up ads in the middle of your Twitter feed and whatever. I get this little monster game all the time. Whenever I sign into Twitter, I get a little ad for a monster game. And I was like, and they do that because it works, because they have figured out a way to do it. And I don't really know what topic I'm on after at this point. But yes, social media presence. It's hell, but you have to do it. Hell is other people.
With your experience in working in a team, if we say that like a really big game company would offer you your work, what would you be, your answer be?
So, a few years back, I don't remember exact dates because I never remember dates, but Double Fine Productions started a Kickstarter or a crowdfunding for Psychonauts 2, right? And the game that made me become a game developer is Psychonauts, right? So this was like, and now they have a big budget for Psychonauts 2, and they're gonna be hiring people, right? They're gonna need programmers, they're gonna need artists. If you're ever gonna send a job application to Double Fine, which is your dream company, then this is the time to do it. And I sat there looking at the successful Kickstarter, and then I looked at my elephant game and was like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna send my application to Double Fine, And it's like that. This is the best game company that I know of, and this is an opportune moment to try to get hired by them. And I'm not even gonna try because I have my own thing going, Even if you offer me, even if you come be a rich American and offer me the sun and the sky before you disappear, I'm not gonna say yes to that because I already have a plan of my own, which is weird.
Hi, Niklas. I recognize you from your Stugan application. What do you think was in your application that made Stugan choose you out of like countless other projects?
Right. I have two answers to that, and one of them is pretty awkward. The simple answer is the one I actually talked about a bit with the Stugan people, is that you gotta make a game. Yes, obviously your game is gonna be pretty cool. But as we heard today, your presence at the interview, your enthusiasm is also a big part of it. And the Stugan people, they want this to be a thing, right? They want a social media presence too, because everyone needs a freaking social media presence, right? So they want to make sure to have people that are not socially awkward, that can speak English relatively well, that don't stand in the video going, "Hi, I'm making a game. This is my game," right? You need them. They want sort of personalities, right? Because you're making a game, that's your product, but the Stugan's product is not one of the particular games. The Stugan product is the event itself, right? So they want to have sort of explosive personalities for that. And if you don't have an explosive personality, then I don't know, can you fake it somehow? My second awkward answer is, it's awkward because it has to do with people that I know. The friends that I left behind in Stockholm also applied for Stugan. It was this super strange situation where one morning we woke up and one of the friends was like, "Hey, look at this thing I found on Facebook or something. We should totally apply for this. It would be hilarious. And we should come up with a game concept. We have like 3 months until the deadline. We should come up with a game concept, make a pitch document, make some concept art, and send it to them, right? We are so cool that we will definitely get in." And I was like, actually, I have better chances with my elephant game. I hate to say it, guys, but if I strike out on my own, if I leave you behind like some sort of cutthroat bastard, my chances are much greater. And lo and behold, I got into Stugan, and my friend did not in fact get into Stugan. And I have done that before, applying for a grant or to get into an event or something, and you're like, Yeah, I'm a great game designer. I can totally make a pitch document. I can make some concept art. I can send it to them. I can say, this is going to be the coolest game ever. But the thing is, if you're sending a document with like, yes, we're going to have combat and you can jump and also it's very cool and here's the concept art. I mean, somewhere in that document you're going to have to say, this is a new team. We have never ever made a game before, but we were friends for several years. We have tried several times to make a game, but we have never managed to. And like, it's so easy to see through that. Like, it's so easy to see a document that, and I felt it as I wrote this doc. I have a specific one in mind. I felt it as I wrote it that this is not something that people are going to believe in because it's just text on a paper. Whereas I have been working on the elephant game for like 5 or 6 months. I have an actual gameplay footage, actual animations, actual content in an actual engine you can actually play that is so much stronger. And I was just accidentally lucky that it happened to align so well. Like time-wise, the Stugan could not have happened at any better moment for the elephant development than it actually did.
One final question.
One final.
Okay. These are actually 2 questions, but I may have to try to squeeze them into one.
I'm going to talk about something else anyway. So.
Okay. First off, you mentioned that your thoughts on mobile games are that they aren't profitable, or they're hard to make profitable because there are these huge juggernauts out there and a lot of competition in general. Yeah. And you also released your game Belladonna on Steam. So how is this any different than from publishing? Yeah, how is it any different than publishing a game on mobile than in comparison with Steam?
Versus Steam. Ooh, that is a very interesting question. So they have different people, like different kinds of people play or get their games from Steam or from mobile games, right? Because mobile games have tapped into this niche of people tapping on little colorful dots when they're on the bus, right? So a large portion of the clients or the customers you find there are going to be people who tap on little colorful balloons on the bus, which is not bad in and of itself. I mean, if that's the game you have made, then trying to release that on Steam is weird, you know? But if you have a game, and I am a 20-something weird guy myself, right? I've been playing video games and I've been playing Zelda, and I know how to talk the sort of game lingo, right? So I know how to find the Steam users. Not that I know how to find the Steam users, but if I were to meet the Steam users, I would be able to talk to them. Whereas if I were to meet a mobile game users, I don't even know what a mobile game user is, right? Many of the top downloaded apps come from sort of click farms, where you have a lot of people just downloading the game over and over again to make it seem like it's really popular. And I mean, the fact that that is a thing just clues you in how weird the mobile game market is. But depends on what game you're making, obviously. So I have 3 games on Google Play. Uploading a game to Google Play takes maybe 15 minutes if you've done it a few times, right? It's not difficult. Getting on Apple is more difficult because you're gonna have some licenses and it's gonna take a while to evaluate and stuff. But Google Play is shoot it out there, just throw it up. Whatever garbage you have, just throw it up there. Which is also a problem because it's full of garbage. Whereas Steam, you have to go through green light, you have to actually have like a trailer, you have to have a specific amount of screenshots and stuff. I don't know if this answers the questions in any way.
Yeah, it can do. But I have also one final question.
Okay, good.
It's a smaller one.
I like to talk.
Have the games you made in teams been less profitable than the games or work you have done by yourself? Or has it only felt so because you divided the profits between several people? That's
also a very interesting question. And the answer is, the games that I have made in team have not ever been finished, right? It's not a matter of whether or not they sell better, it's that the games that I make myself, I can finish and release, whereas the games I make in teams gets bogged down and slows the production and gets cancelled. And I don't even know how many clients I've worked with, but I have like maybe 2 games that have actually been released. You know, as you saw, the sci-fi RTS thing just disappeared, and the fish game is actually released, but that's not my responsibility. So that's the answer. Like, it's not that I can't make good games in teams. It's that I can't make games at all in teams. And we did manage to get Walkabout, and you have no idea how much of a struggle it was to make Walkabout. I think someone else talked about how difficult it is to make your game the year after school, when everyone is kind of still in the student mindset, but also kind of have to pay rent, and it was pain to get the conversion from the old-timey version to the mobile version. And the fact that we did this is incredible, and then, you know, it didn't pay anything, so I think that's the answer. It's not a matter of how much money you make, it's about whether or not you can finish it at all. And I think I have to go off stage now because someone else wants to.